You ever find yourself in one of those sticky situations where your gut is screaming one thing, but your job, well, it's demanding something totally different? Yeah, that's the messy, complicated, and super important world of professional ethics. And today, we're going to try and untangle some of that. Let's get right into it. Okay, so instead of just diving into a bunch of dry rules, let's start with a real dilemma, something that really puts you in the hot seat. One of those situations where the right answer is, well, it's not so black and white. And look, this isn't just some abstract textbook question. This is a real gut check moment, the kind of thing that can seriously define your career. You've got your loyalty to your family on one side and your professional duty to your company on the other. So, what do you do? It's tricky, right? The answer is definitely not as simple as you might think. In moments like that, just going with your gut can be a really bad idea. Emotions get involved, things get cloudy. What you really need is something more reliable. A solid framework that works like a moral compass, a true North Star. Something that can guide you to the right decision, especially when you're in the middle of a thick moral fog. So, for folks in the security profession, that North Star is the ASIS Code of Conduct. And let me be really clear here, this is not just a list of friendly suggestions. Oh no, this code has real teeth. If you're certified, violating it can mean losing that certification you worked so incredibly hard for. The stakes are high. So, what's in this Code of Conduct? Well, it's all built on 6 core principles. You've got the basics, right? Like complying with the law and always being honest. Then there's protecting people, property, and information. And of course, keeping sensitive stuff confidential. Plus, that big one we're going to talk about, avoiding conflicts of interest. And finally, just staying sharp and professional. Think of these as the fundamental building blocks. Put them all together and you have a really powerful guide for pretty much any ethical curveball that gets thrown your way. All right, let's zoom in on one of those principles, because it's probably the trickiest one of them all. Conflicts of interest. Oh yeah, this is where things can get super personal and where those clear lines between right and wrong can start to look, well, incredibly blurry. So what exactly is a conflict of interest? Well, here's the more formal definition, but it all comes down to that situation we started with. The key phrase to remember is interferes with your professional judgment. It's that critical moment where you have to stop and ask yourself, hey, is my personal relationship here getting in the way of me doing what's actually best for my employer? That's the core question. Okay, so back to our brother-in-law scenario. What's the right move? It really boils down to 2 key actions. First, transparency. You've got to disclose a relationship to your boss. No secrets. Second, recusal, which is a fancy way of saying you have to completely remove yourself from the decision-making process. Step away from it. Yeah, it might feel a little awkward, for sure. But honestly, it's the only way to protect yourself, your integrity, and the company. And hey, this isn't just about family members. What about gifts? A vendor offers you amazing tickets to a sold-out concert, or a client sends a super expensive bottle of scotch to your house. They seem harmless, right? But these small gestures can create this feeling of obligation, like you owe them something. And that, my friends, is a very slippery slope. So the golden rule here is pretty simple. If you're ever in doubt, just politely decline. It's always the safest bet. Okay, but now let's raise the stakes even higher. What happens when these ethical puzzles go global? Suddenly, you're not just dealing with your company's code of conduct anymore. Nope. Now you are navigating a literal minefield of international anti-bribery laws where just one wrong step can lead to absolutely catastrophic consequences for you and your company. And this is where things get really complicated. I mean, just look at the difference between the laws in the US and the UK. In the US, something called a grease payment, a small payment to speed up a routine government action, might be okay in some very specific cases. But under the UK Bribery Act, absolutely not. It's considered a bribe, period. And companies have paid billions of dollars in fines for messing this up. So how in the world do you stay safe when the rulebook changes every time you cross a border? So what's the solution to this global legal puzzle? It's actually pretty simple if you think about it. Imagine you're on a road trip. The speed limit in one state is 75 miles per hour, but in the next state, it drops to 65. What do? You slow down to 65, right? You follow the stricter rule. It's the exact same idea here. The only surefire way to stay out of trouble is to adopt the strictest standard across the board and ban all of these facilitating payments, period. That way, you're covered no matter where you are. Okay, so we've talked a lot about individual choices, but that's only half the battle. How do you build an entire culture of integrity? one where every single person on the team is committed to doing the right thing, even when it's hard. How do you basically build an ethical fortress around your organization? Well, it absolutely has to start at the top. And the bedrock of that fortress, the absolute foundation, is creating a culture where people feel safe to speak up. A whistleblower, that term gets a bad rap sometimes. But a whistleblower isn't a traitor. They're your organization's immune system. They're the canary in the coal mine, warning you that there's danger ahead before it's too late. So how do you actually build that culture of safety? It really comes down to 3 critical steps. First, you need a formal, written code of ethics that everyone reads and signs. No ambiguity. Second, you have to give people a way to report problems anonymously, like a hotline. They need to know they can speak up without revealing their identity. And third, and this one is crucial, you must have an ironclad, zero-tolerance, non-retaliation policy. You have to guarantee that anyone who reports an issue in good faith will be protected. It's about building a system where doing the right thing isn't just encouraged, it's defended. Because in the end, all of this, it's not really about codes of conduct or international laws on a slide, is it? It all boils down to personal character. It's about the choices you make. When the pressure is on and you think nobody is looking, who do you choose to be? That right there is the true test of your ethics.